As emerging markets like China and India continue to grow, Canada needs to aggressively increase our export markets and investment ties with those regions of the world. Stephen Harper does not subscribe to this philosophy. He canceled the previous government's $485 million strategy to help up to 5,000 Canadian firms, mostly small and medium-sized enterprises, get better access to priority markets like China and India. Can you believe that not a single minister has been to India since the Conservatives took office? At the end of this month, the Conservative government will close Canadian consulates in Milan, St. Petersburg, Osaka, and Fukuoka, leading to lost business opportunities, investments, jobs, and exports for Canadian companies. Milan, the most dynamic city in Europe. Almost. I don't want to create diplomatic problems with other countries. One of them. And under Mr. Harper, the Pacific Gateway Project, a crucial new infrastructure and port project to speed Canada's access to the Asian market, will take 3 years longer than the Liberals had planned due to Conservative funding cuts. Meanwhile, the rest of the world is not standing still. Asia-Pacific countries have no less than 186 bilateral free trade agreements in force or in negotiations. This Prime Minister hasn't just wasted a year. As with taxation, is moving in the wrong direction while our competitors are moving forward. Competitive taxation, aggressive on the international market. Now let's talk about research, innovation, education. As a result of that legacy, Canada is ranked first in the G8 for publicly reformed research and development. Stephen Harper has taken us on the opposite direction. On R&D spending, we've seen new funding cut by more than 70%, from $1.8 billion to just $500 million. Research granting councils, the heart of Canada's innovation, we're counting on increases of $425 million over the next 5 years. $425 million. Under this Conservative government, they'll have only $40 million a year. As a result, these councils are running out of money for new projects. At the same time, the Conservatives failed to renew funding for Technology Partnership Canada, which provided more than $300 million annually to help companies undertake R&D. Finally, the Conservative cut funding for the indirect cost of research at post-secondary institutions from $1.2 billion over 2 years to just $800 million over 2 years. What other G8 country is cutting new R&D spending by 70%? Do you know one other country doing that? I don't. The European Union is aiming to increase R&D to 3% of GDP by 2010. Meanwhile, Canada is stalled at less than 2%. Under Stephen Harper, we're falling behind. The next step that we need to do instead is commercialization. And it's what the Liberal strategy was all about. Bringing ideas from the lab to the market in all sectors of the economy. Well, we lag behind the US in helping companies capitalize on new research and ideas. Here again, Conservative cuts have taken the place of a strategy for success. Prime Minister cut $3.1 billion over 5 years for new investment in students' financial assistance, graduate scholarship, and international study. In its place, he offered a tax credit on textbooks to a maximum of $80 per year per student and other small ticket items. The end result? New federal support for post-secondary education has fallen for an incredible 70%. On skills training, the Liberal government created, in partnership with the provinces, the Labour Market Partnership Agreements, worth $3.5 billion over the next 5 years to enhance skills development on the workplace. The Conservative government cancelled these agreements. What other G8 country is cutting funding for skills and training, the key to helping its people find jobs? The bottom line is this. Under Stephen Harper, we're investing far less in Canada's most important resource, our people. Canada cannot afford to sit still. Yet while the rest of the world sets ambitious targets and commits major resources, the Harper government offers nothing but cuts. To conclude, Canada has the skills and resources to be an economic leader. But in 3 areas that are key to our economic future, competitive taxes, international trade, and research and education, the Prime Minister has been moving Canada in the wrong direction, while the rest of the world has been aggressively forging ahead. A Prime Minister should understand that economic policy is about planning for the long term. He should understand that the cuts he has put in place reduce our productivity. He should understand the crucial roles of international trade and investment, research and commercialization. I told the Prime Minister publicly many times, I told the Prime Minister to fight climate change. And coincidentally, Mr. Harper partially restored some of the Liberal programs he had cut. I told the Prime Minister to address urban transit. And coincidentally, Mr. Harper used, to Toronto's benefit, part of the money the Liberals put aside. We have seen that this week. So let me try again. I call on the Prime Minister to re-establish the competitiveness agenda for Canada in the next budget. We'll see. We'll see. But replacing Liberal programs with pale imitations is no substitute for responsible, long-term planning that the Dion government would provide. Canada's future success, economic as well as environmental, calls for a comprehensive strategy, not a sudden, last-minute attempt to prepare for an election. I believe Canadians will see past Stephen Harper's short-term approach. I believe Canadian taxpayers would rather take more money home on their paycheck than save a penny when they buy a cup of coffee. I believe Canadian businesses would rather find new clients in China or India than watch Mr. Harper close consulates and cancel trade missions. I believe Canadian researchers would rather develop the new BlackBerry here in Ontario than watch it happen in Europe or in the US. And I believe Canadians everywhere would rather their government secure our prosperity for the future than spend it today on instant gratification and gimmicks. It's time to get back on course. As Prime Minister, I would govern for the next generation, not just the next election. For a healthy planet, for social justice, for a strong economy, and for good jobs for ourselves, our children, and the next generation. Merci.